You're going in!
Lois was on the deck, barefoot. Her white linen dress soaked through from the storm. Her braids whipped across her face as she gripped the railing, trying to keep her balance. The yacht was pitching violently. Too violently. She looked back at her husband through the rain. "Flynn, what's happening? Why aren't we turning back?" He didn't answer, just adjusted the throttle, pushed them farther from shore. "Flynn, talk to me." And that's when she smelled it. Fuel. Too strong. Too close. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach. 7 months swollen with their child. Their daughter. The baby they'd planned together. Or so she thought. "Flynn, I smell fuel. Something's wrong. We need to." "I know." 2 words. Flat. Empty. And in that moment, standing on that deck with a storm raging around her and the smell of gasoline filling her lungs, Dr. Lois Castellano, one of the brightest research chemists in the country, finally understood. This wasn't an accident. This was a plan. Her husband was going to kill her. Quick check, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state below. We're on a mission to hit 1K subscribers and 1K likes. Please be part of it. Thank you for being part of Dr. Samuel Chronicles. Now let's get into it. You won't want to miss this. Dear God, bless my family watching right now. Fill their homes with peace, their hearts with strength, and their lives with favor. Protect them, guide them, and let every challenge turn into a testimony. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, let me take you back to where this really started. For months before that yacht, before the explosion, before Lois knew her entire life was built on a lie. For months earlier, Lois Castellano had everything. And I mean everything. The kind of life that makes other people stop scrolling and stare. A penthouse in downtown Seattle with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Elliott Bay like a painting. Every morning she'd wake up to that view. Silver water stretching out forever. The Olympics rising in the distance. The space was modern, clean, expensive in that understated way that whispers instead of shouts. She had a lab. A real lab. Not some cramped university setup. But a fully equipped pharmaceutical research facility. With equipment most scientists only dreamed about. She was doing work that mattered. Developing pain medication that could help people, real people, find relief without the addiction that had destroyed so many lives. And she had Flynn. God, she had loved that man. Loved him in that complete, unguarded way you only love someone when you think you finally found your person. Flynn Castellano, CEO of Castellano Pharmaceuticals. Brilliant, ambitious, the kind of man who walked into a room and changed the air. He pursued her 3 years ago at a medical research conference in Boston. She was presenting her findings on non-opioid pain management. He was in the audience, and when she finished, he'd stood up during the Q&A and said, "Dr. Hartley, what you just presented could change the entire landscape of pain treatment. I'd like to offer you a position at my company. And dinner, if you're interested." She'd laughed, said yes to both. That dinner turned into a week of long conversations about science, ethics, the future of medicine. Turned into a relationship that felt like partnership, like finally being seen by someone who understood not just what she did, but why it mattered. He proposed 11 months later. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. She'd changed her name to Castellano, moved into his penthouse, started working at his company as lead research chemist. And for 2 years, it was good. It was really, really good. Flynn was attentive, thoughtful in ways that made her feel cherished. He'd show up at the lab at midnight with Thai food because he knew she forgot to eat when she was deep in data analysis. He'd stand behind her while she studied compound structures on the monitor, arms wrapped around her waist, chin on her shoulder, and whisper, "You're brilliant, you know that? You're gonna crack this." When she told him she was pregnant, he'd cried, actual tears, pulled her close and said, "Lois, you've given me everything, everything I've ever wanted." She believed him, believed every word. Why wouldn't she? What red flags had he given her? None that she'd seen. Or maybe she just hadn't wanted to see them. That's the thing about love. When it's good, when it feels safe, you stop looking for cracks. You stop questioning. You just trust. The cracks were there, though She just didn't find them until it was almost too late. It was a Tuesday. Lois was 7 months pregnant, moving through that specific phase of late pregnancy where you can't stop nesting, organizing, cleaning, rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. She decided to track down the original synthesis notes for Trial Series 7. This was her trial, her research, the compound they were 3 months away from bringing to market. She wanted to double-check some early data, compare it to their current formulation, make sure everything was exactly right before they went into mass production. The original notes should have been in the main lab archive. They weren't. Flynn's assistant said they might be in the basement records room. Old files that hadn't been digitized yet. The basement of Castellano Pharmaceuticals was quiet, cold, rows of filing cabinets and storage boxes that smelled like dust and old paper. Lois moved slowly between the aisles, one hand on her lower back, the other trailing along cabinet labels. She found a section marked Trial Series 7, pulled open the drawer, and grabbed the wrong file. She almost put it back. It was misfiled, clearly in the wrong place. A black binder with no label, shoved behind the folders she actually needed. But something made her pause. Maybe instinct. Maybe God. Maybe just a part of her brain that was trained to notice when things didn't fit the pattern. She pulled it out, opened it. The first page was a data sheet from Trial Series 7. Her trial. But the numbers were wrong. Not wrong like errors. Wrong like they'd been changed. She flipped to the next page. More data. More changes. Side effects that she'd never seen in any of the reports she'd reviewed. Severe side effects. Cardiac events. Liver damage. Neurological symptoms. Her heart started beating faster. She kept reading. Adverse event reports that should have stopped the trial immediately. Patients who reported serious complications. And next to each report, notes in handwriting she didn't recognize. Reassigned unrelated causes. Offer NDA $50,000. Exclude from official dataset. This wasn't a mistake. This was systematic. This was deliberate falsification. Lois sat down hard on a storage box, the binder open in her lap. Her hands were shaking now. No, wait. They weren't shaking. They were completely still. That's what she remembered later. Her hands went totally still, like her body had moved past shock and straight into something colder. She kept reading. Page after page of data that had been scrubbed, sanitized, made to look safe when it absolutely wasn't. And at the bottom of every approval document, 2 signatures. Flynn Castellano, CEO. Lauren Williams, Chief Operating Officer. Lauren, Flynn's business partner. The woman who was always around, always in the background of their life, always watching with those cool, assessing eyes. Lois had never quite trusted her, but she'd pushed that feeling down, told herself she was being paranoid, told herself that Lauren was just professional, just focused, just doing her job. She turned the page, and her whole world stopped. A memo, dated 4 months before she'd even met Flynn, before that conference in Boston, before any of it. Lead chemist position, strategic recruitment. Lois Hartley demonstrates exceptional research credibility and significant peer recognition in the field of pain management. Her published work on non-opioid alternatives has generated considerable positive attention from the FDA and medical community. Her involvement in Trial Series 7 would provide necessary legitimacy for accelerated approval. Recommend immediate recruitment and romantic engagement to ensure loyalty and minimize risk of external oversight. Subject is unmarried. No significant attachments. Career-focused. Preliminary assessment suggests high probability of successful integration. Subject. He called her subject. Lois read it again. Then a third time. The words didn't change. Romantic engagement. Strategic recruitment. Minimize risk of external oversight. Her chest felt tight. Too tight. Like she couldn't get enough air. Flynn hadn't fallen in love with her. He'd recruited her. Targeted her. Romanced her as part of a business strategy. Everything. The dinner in Boston. The late-night conversations. The proposal. The wedding. Moving her into his home. Into his company. Into his life. All of it calculated. All of it designed to turn her brilliance, her reputation, her name, into a shield for fraud. She closed the binder carefully, put it back exactly where she'd found it, grabbed the file she'd actually come for, the one she didn't even care about anymore, and walked back upstairs. She made it to the bathroom, locked the door, and threw up until there was nothing left. When she came out 10 minutes later, she washed her face, fixed her braids, looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was 7 months pregnant, successful, brilliant, married to a man who built their entire relationship on a lie. And that woman had a choice to make. Run. Or wait. Gather evidence. Figure out what to do. Lois chose to wait. And that decision almost killed her. She went home that evening like nothing had happened. Kissed Flynn when he walked in. Let him put his hand on her stomach and feel the baby kick. Made small talk over dinner about work, about the nursery, about baby names. And the whole time, she was watching him. Really watching him. Looking for the truth under the performance. Flynn was good. She had to give him that. He didn't slip. Didn't give her a single tell that he knew she'd found anything. But there was something. A half-second pause before a smile came up when he walked through the door. The way his eyes scanned the room before he greeted her. Like he was calculating. Assessing. He knew. Somehow he knew. That night, lying in bed next to him. Feeling him breathe in the dark, Lois stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of it. Tried to reconcile the man who'd held her, while she cried about a failed experiment with a man who'd falsified trial data. The man who'd rubbed her feet when they swelled in her second trimester with a man who'd written the word subject next to her name. She couldn't reconcile it, because they weren't the same person. One was real, one was a role he'd been playing, and she'd been too in love to see the difference. 2 days later, Flynn suggested a trip. Let's take the yacht out this weekend, he said over breakfast. Casual, easy, like it was just a spontaneous idea. Get some air before the fall storms really hit. Just us. Quality time before the baby comes. Lois felt something cold slide down her spine, but she smiled. That sounds nice. Perfect. I'll have everything ready by Saturday. Saturday morning was overcast. Gray skies pressing down low over the sound. Lois packed a small bag, moved slowly, her mind running through scenarios. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe there was an explanation for everything she'd found. Maybe Flynn would tell her the truth if she just asked. But every time she tried to form the words, they stuck in her throat. Because somewhere deep down, under the denial and the hope and the desperate wish that this was all a misunderstanding, she knew. She knew what was coming. They drove to Marina in Flynn's car. He was relaxed, humming along to the radio, talking about how good it would be to get away from the city for a few hours. And Lois sat in the passenger seat with her hand on her stomach, feeling the baby move, and wonder if this was the last car ride she'd ever take. The yacht was beautiful. 60 feet of polished teak and gleaming white hull, rocking gently in its slip. Flynn had owned it for years, long before they'd met. He'd taken her out on it a dozen times. Sunset cruises, lazy Sunday afternoons. It had always felt like a refuge. Now it felt like a trap. Lois stepped aboard carefully, one hand on the railing, the other supporting her belly. The deck was slick from the morning mist. Flynn was already moving around, untying lines, checking gauges, doing the pre-departure routine she'd watched him do 100 times. And then she saw movement below deck, a figure in the cabin. Lauren Williams emerged from the stairs, a wine glass in her hand, wearing a dark gray gown that looked completely out of place on a yacht. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon. Diamond earrings caught the flat light. She looked like she was dressed for a gallery opening, not a boat trip. Lauren, Lois said, unable to keep the surprise out of her voice. I didn't know you were coming. Lauren smiled, that small, controlled smile that never quite reached her eyes. Last-minute decision. Flynn invited me. I hope that's all right. No, it wasn't all right. Every instinct Lois had was screaming that this was wrong, that she needed to get off this boat right now. But Flynn was already starting the engine, and the lines were untied, and they were pulling away from the dock, and it was too late. Too late to run. Too late to call for help. Too late for anything except whatever came next. They headed north, up the Sound, away from the city. The sky got darker. The water got rougher. Lois sat on the bench seat near the stern, watching Seattle shrink behind them, feeling the baby do somersaults inside her like even she could sense something was wrong. Flynn kept pushing forward, past the usual turning point, past the islands where they normally stopped, into open water where the swells were bigger, meaner, the kind of water you avoided when a storm was coming. Flynn, Lois called over the engine noise. We should turn back. The weather's getting bad. He didn't turn around, just kept his hands on the wheel, just a little farther. Flynn, I'm serious. This isn't safe. I know. Those two words again. I know. The same flat tone he'd used in the basement when she'd asked him about the data. And Lois felt the last piece of hope die in her chest. This was it. This was really it. She stood up, gripping the railing as the yacht pitched in the waves. Lauren was watching her from across the deck, still holding that ridiculous wine glass, completely unbothered by the storm building around them. Lois started moving toward the cabin stairs. If she could just get below deck, find the radio, call the Coast Guard, something, anything. But Lauren stepped into her path, blocked the stairs, and smiled. I wouldn't, Lauren said quietly. There's nowhere to go, Lois. Lois stopped, stared at this woman in her expensive gown, with her cold eyes and her colder smile. You planned this. Both of you. Of course we did. Did you really think we'd let you walk around with everything you know? You found the files. Flynn told me. So careless of you to put them back in the wrong order. Lauren took a sip of wine. We built something extraordinary. A pharmaceutical empire that generates hundreds of millions in revenue. And we did it by being smarter than the regulators, smarter than the ethics boards, smarter than everyone, including you. People are dying, Lois said. Her voice shook, not from fear, from rage. The drug is killing people. I saw the reports, the real reports. Acceptable losses, Lauren said, like she was discussing quarterly projections. Every medication has side effects. We simply chose not to let a few unfortunate outcomes derail a profitable product. A few? There were dozens. Heart attacks. Organ failure. You buried it all. We managed a narrative. There's a difference. Lauren set down her wine glass on a nearby surface. It didn't even slide despite the pitching of the boat. And we would have continued managing it beautifully if you just stayed in your lane. But you couldn't. You had to go digging. You had to play detective. Lois felt the yacht lurch hard to starboard. The engine sound changed, got louder, rougher, and then she smelled it. Gasoline. Strong. Overwhelming. She looked at Flynn. He was stepping away from the helm, moving toward the emergency raft mounted on the port side. Flynn. Her voice cracked. Flynn, please. I'm carrying your child. He stopped, turned to look at her. And for just a second, 1 second, something flickered across his face. Something that might have been regret. But then it was gone. I'm sorry it has to be like this, he said. He wasn't sorry. Not even close. But he said it anyway. The engine screamed. Lois smelled smoke now, mixing with the gasoline. She stumbled toward the railing, her pregnant belly throwing off her balance, her feet slipping on the wet deck. The yacht was shaking. Actually shaking. And then she heard it, a sound like the world tearing itself apart. The explosion hit from below, a concussive blast that turned the back half of the yacht into fire and shrapnel. Lois was thrown forward, over the railing, into the air. For a half second she was weightless, suspended between the burning boat and the freezing water, her hands reaching for something, anything, her mouth open in a scream she couldn't hear over the roar of the blast. And then she hit the water. It was like hitting concrete. Every bit of air left her lungs in one violent expulsion. The cold was immediate, total, stopping her heart for one terrible beat before it kicked back into overdrive. She went under, down, down, the weight of her pregnancy pulling her like an anchor, her dress tangling around her legs, her lungs screaming for air she couldn't reach. She kicked, fought, clawed upward through black water that felt thick as oil. Her vision was darkening at the edges. The baby was moving inside her, frantic, panicked. Or maybe that was just her own heartbeat. She couldn't tell anymore. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything except fight for the surface that seemed miles away. Her hand broke through first, then her face. She gasped, sucked in air and water and smoke, coughed violently. The yacht was a fireball behind her, flames reaching up into the storm clouds, debris raining down around her. She tried to swim, but her arms wouldn't cooperate. The cold was stealing her strength, her coordination, her ability to do anything except stay afloat. She was going to die here, in this water, with her baby. And Flynn and Lauren were going to get away with everything. And then a hand grabbed her arm. Hard. Pulled. Lois didn't have the strength to fight. Didn't have the awareness to be scared. She just let herself be pulled, dragged, hauled through the water by someone strong enough to move them both. She heard a voice, low and urgent, right next to her ear. "I've got you. Don't fight me. Just breathe." She tried to see who it was, but her vision was blurring. Tried to speak, but only water came out. The hand around her arm never loosened. Never let go. Just kept pulling her through the waves, away from the burning yacht, towards something she couldn't see. And then there was a boat. Not the yacht. Something smaller. A rescue boat. Hands reaching down. Voices shouting instructions she couldn't process. She was lifted, pulled up and over the side, laid flat on a deck that felt solid and real and impossible. Someone rolled her onto her side, thumped her back. "Come on, breathe, get it out." Lois coughed, vomited up what felt like half the Puget Sound, gasped for air like she'd forgotten how. Her whole body was shaking, violent tremors she couldn't control. But she was breathing. She was alive. And the baby. She pressed her hand to her stomach, felt movement. The baby was still moving. "My baby," she choked out. "Is my baby still there?" A man's voice said, firm, "Sure, you're both okay." Lois forced her eyes open, blinked salt water out of them, and saw him for the first time. Strong jaw, eyes that were completely steady even in the middle of this chaos. He was soaked through, his clothes plastered him, his hands moving with practiced efficiency as he wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders. "Who are you?" she managed. "Marcus Reed." "How did you?" "Not now. Right now you need to stay warm and stay conscious." He was checking her pulse, her pupils, doing some kind of rapid assessment she didn't have the brain power to follow. "Can you tell me your name?" "Lois. Lois Castellano." "Okay, Lois. I'm going to get us to shore. You're going to be okay. Both of you." Behind them, the yacht collapsed into itself with a groan of dying metal and disappeared under the waves. The flames hissed out. The debris field spread across the water, and the storm finally broke overhead, rain pouring down in sheets, washing away the smoke and the gasoline smell, and everything except the sound of the rescue boat's engine and Lois's ragged breathing. Marcus moved to the helm, started the engine, pointed them toward shore, away from the wreckage, away from the death Flynn had planned for her. Lois lay on the deck, wrapped in a thermal blanket, shaking so hard her teeth rattled, and tried to understand what had just happened. Tried to process that she'd just been murdered. Except she hadn't, because this man, this stranger, had pulled her out of the water at the exact right moment. "How did you know?" She called over the engine noise. "How did you know to be there?" Marcus glanced back at her. Something complicated crossed his face. "Later," he said, "when you're warm and safe. Then we'll talk." But Lois already knew. On some level, she already knew this wasn't random. This wasn't luck. Someone had sent him. Someone had known what Flynn was planning and had sent Marcus Reed to save her. The question was who and why. The shore peered out of rain like a ghost. Rocky beach. Tree line beyond. Marcus cut the engine and guided them in carefully, avoiding the worst of the rocks. When they were close enough, he jumped into the waist-deep water and pulled the boat in by hand. Then he came back for Lois. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I don't know. I'm going to help you. Put your arm around my shoulders." She did. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, pregnant belly and all, and carried her through the water to the beach. Set her down on a flat section of rock that was somewhat sheltered from the rain. She sat there, dripping, shaking, staring at the water like she expected Flynn to come walking out of it. "He tried to kill me," she said. Not a question, just a fact she was saying out loud to make it real. "I know," Marcus said, "and you saved me." "Yes." "Why?" Marcus crouched down in front of her, meeting her eyes. "Because you're the only person who can stop him, and someone made sure I knew that." Lois looked at him, this man who'd appeared out of nowhere, and jumped into freezing water to save a stranger. "Who sent you?" "A lawyer named Patterson, out of Portland. He said his client needed protection for a witness in a federal case. Pharmaceutical fraud. Gave me your name, your schedule, and the coordinates for where you'd be today." The words sank in slowly. Someone had been watching. Someone knew about the falsified trials. Someone knew Flynn was going to kill her, and instead of stopping him directly, they'd waited. Let her get on that yacht. Let Flynn set the trap, and then set Marcus to pull her out at the last possible second. "So I'm bait," Lois said quietly. "No, you're the queen." Marcus stood, scanned the tree line. "But right now we need to move. Flynn's going to send people to confirm you're dead, and when they don't find a body, they're going to start searching. So we need to be gone before that happens." Lois tried to stand. Her legs almost gave out. Marcus caught her, steadied her. "I've got you," he said again. And for some reason, she believed him. They walked, Marcus supporting most of her weight. Lois moving on pure adrenaline and survival instinct. Through the rocks, into the tree line, along a path that Marcus seemed to know even in the dark and rain. Her feet were bleeding. Her dress was in tatters. Her whole body felt like one massive bruise. But she kept moving, because the alternative was dying. And she just survived a murder attempt. She wasn't about to give up now. They reached a vehicle hidden in the trees. An old SUV, nondescript, mud-splattered. Marcus helped her into the passenger seat, cranked the heat, grabbed dry clothes from the back. Sweatpants, a flannel shirt. Both way too big, but clean and warm. "Change," he said, turning his back to give her privacy. "We got a 30-minute drive." "To where?" "Somewhere safe." Lois changed with shaking hands. The dry clothes felt like heaven. She kept her hand on her stomach the whole time, feeling the baby move, reassuring herself over and over that they were both still alive. When she was done, Marcus got in the driver's seat and started driving. No headlights for the first mile, just navigating by memory through back roads Lois didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" she asked again. "Fishing cabin, 30 miles up the coast. No road access except the one we're on. No neighbors. No cell service. Off-grid. You're prepared." "It's my job to be prepared." Lois leaned her head against a window, watched the dark trees slide past. "What exactly is your job, Marcus Reed?" "Right now, keeping you alive." "And before right now?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I was a military operative, then private security. Now I take contracts for people who need protection from threats the normal system can't handle. People like me. People exactly like you." They drove in silence after that. Lois's brain was trying to process too many things at once, and failing at all of them. Her husband had tried to kill her. She'd nearly drowned. She was pregnant and traumatized and sitting in a car with a man she'd met 20 minutes ago who'd save her life. Nothing made sense. Everything was too big, too fast, too overwhelming. The cabin appeared out of the darkness like something from a fairy tale. Small, weathered, tucked behind a dense stand of evergreens that made it almost invisible from the road. Marcus parked behind the cabin, killed the engine, sat for a moment just listening. "We're clear," he said finally. "Let's get you inside." The cabin was basic. One main room with a wood stove, a kitchenette, a table, 2 chairs. A small bedroom off to the side with a cot. A bathroom that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. But it was warm once Marcus got the stove going. And it was safe. Or at least safer than anywhere else Lois could think of. She sat in one of the chairs and just stared at the wood stove, watched the flames build, felt the heat start to penetrate the cold that had settled into her bones. The baby was still moving, active, alive, Lois pressed both hands flat against her stomach, and finally, let herself feel it. The terror, the betrayal, the rage, all of it hitting her at once like a second explosion. "Hey!" Marcus's voice was gentle. He crouched down in front of her chair. "You're in shock. That's normal. But I need you to stay with me, okay? Don't go too far inside your head. My husband just tried to murder me." Her voice sounded strange. Distant. "I know. He was going to let me die. Let our baby die. I know. How did he become this? How did I not see it?" Marcus didn't have an answer for that. He just stayed there, crouched in front of her, a steady presence in a world that had turned completely upside down. "I need you to eat something," he said after a moment. "And then you need to sleep. Real sleep. Your body's been through trauma. The baby needs you to rest." "I can't sleep." "You can, and you will, because tomorrow we start figuring out how to take him down." Lois looked at him, really looked at him, this stranger who'd risked his own life to save hers. "Why are you helping me?" "Because it's the right thing to do." That's not a real answer. Marcus stood, moved to the kitchenette, started pulling out supplies. "My sister died 3 years ago," he said, not looking at her. "Prescription medication. The manufacturer knew it was dangerous. Knew people were dying. They buried the reports. Paid off the families who complained. Kept selling it because the profits were too good to stop. By the time the truth came out, by the time the drug got pulled, she was already gone." He turned to face her. "So when a lawyer called me and said there was a pharmaceutical CEO falsifying trial data and planning to kill the one person who could prove it, I didn't need much convincing. This is personal for me. Which means I'm not going to let Flynn Castellano get away with what he's done. To you, to all the people his drug is hurting. Not while I'm still breathing." Lois felt tears sting her eyes. The first tears since the explosion. "I'm sorry about your sister." "Me too." He set a plate in front of her. Crackers, cheese, an apple, simple food. "Eat, then sleep. We'll talk more in the morning." She ate. Not because she was hungry, but because he was right. The baby needed food, needed her to take care of herself. When she was done, Marcus showed her to the small bedroom. The cot was narrow, but the blankets were clean and warm. Lois lay down fully dressed, too exhausted to do anything else. "I'll be right outside," Marcus said from the doorway. "You're safe here. I promise." Marcus. "Yeah. Thank you for jumping in, for coming after me." "You don't have to thank me, Lois. Just rest." He closed the door softly, and Lois lay there in the dark, hand on her stomach, feeling her daughter move and move and move, and thought about everything she'd lost today. Her marriage, her home, her sense of safety, her trust in her own judgment. All of it gone in one explosion. But she was alive. They were both alive. And that meant she still had a chance to fight back, to expose Flynn, to make sure Lauren and everyone involved in this fraud paid for what they'd done. She just needed to survive long enough to do it. She closed her eyes. And despite everything, despite the trauma and the fear and the uncertainty, exhaustion pulled her under. She slept. Lois woke to sunlight streaming through a gap in the curtains. For one disoriented second, she didn't remember where she was. Didn't remember why her body ached like she'd been hit by a truck. And then it all came rushing back. The yacht, the explosion, the water, Flynn trying to kill her. She sat up too fast. The room spun. Her hand went immediately to her stomach. The baby kicked. Strong. Annoyed at being jostled. Lois breathed out slowly. Okay. Still alive. Still pregnant. Still here. She stood carefully, testing her legs. They held. Barely, but they held. She opened the bedroom door. Marcus was at the table, laptop open. 3 phones arranged in front of him like he was running a command center. He looked up when she entered. "Morning," he said. "How do you feel?" "Like I got blown off a boat." "That's accurate." He stood, moved to the kitchenette. "Coffee's fresh. There's bread and eggs if you want them." Lois poured coffee into a chipped mug, added sugar from a bowl that looked like it had been sitting in this cabin since 1987. She sat down across from Marcus. The coffee was strong, bitter, perfect. "What time is it?" she asked. "Just after 8. "How long did I sleep?" "About 10 hours. 10 hours. She'd been so exhausted she hadn't even dreamed. Or if she had, she didn't remember them. Lois took another sip of coffee, studying Marcus over the rim of the mug. He looked tired. Not sleepy tired. Worn tired. Like he'd been awake all night. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "Enough." "That's not an answer. It's the one you're getting." He turned the laptop toward her. A news article filled the screen. Yacht explosion off Puget Sound. CEO and wife missing. Presumed dead. Lois read it slowly. Her own face stared back at her from a photo she recognized. Last year's pharmaceutical gala. Her in an emerald green dress. Flynn's arm around her waist. Both of them smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. The article said the explosion was likely caused by a faulty fuel line. That the Coast Guard had found debris, but no bodies. That Flynn Castellano was being treated as a victim of a tragic accident along with his beloved wife. "Beloved wife," Lois said flatly. "He's already controlling the narrative." "Of course he is. He's good at this." She kept reading. Statements from colleagues expressing shock and grief. Lauren Williams quoted as saying, "Flynn and Lois were like family to me. This loss is devastating." The article mentioned Lois's pregnancy, called it a double tragedy, made Flynn sound like a grieving husband who'd lost everything. "Except he's not dead," Lois said. "No." Coast Guard picked up a distress signal 2 miles from the explosion site. Private vessel recovered 2 people, Flynn and Lauren. They're back in Seattle right now. Lois set down the coffee mug before she threw it. "So they think they won. For now." Marcus closed the laptop. "But that's about to change." "How?" "Because you're alive. And because I'm going to help you build a case that destroys everything they've built." Lois looked at him. This man who barely knew her, but had already risked his life to save hers. "You said someone hired you. A lawyer. Patterson." "That's right. And this lawyer's client knew Flynn was going to kill me." "Yes." "So why didn't they just warn me? Why go through this whole thing? Why let me get on that yacht at all?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Because if they'd approached you directly, Flynn would have known. He had access to everything in your life. Your phone, your computer, your schedule. If anyone had contacted you with warnings about him, he would have seen it, and he would have moved up his timeline, killed you before you had a chance to run. So they waited, let me walk into a death trap, and sent you to pull me out at the last second. It's not ideal. I know that, but it kept you alive." Lois pressed her fingers against her temples. "I'm a chess piece." "You're the queen," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. Queens are the most powerful piece on the board. You have information Flynn can't afford to let surface. You have legal standing he didn't account for. And now you have something he doesn't know about. You're alive, and he thinks you're dead. That gives us an advantage." "What kind of advantage?" Marcus pulled a folder from his bag, set it on the table between them. "This is what Patterson sent me. Documents from inside Castellano Pharmaceuticals. Internal memos. Financial records. Communications between Flynn and Lauren. All of it pointing to systematic fraud." Lois opened the folder, started reading, and with each page, her hands got steadier. Her jaw got tighter. Her mind shifted from victim to strategist, because this was what she was good at. Data, evidence, building airtight cases. She'd spent her entire career learning how to prove things beyond doubt. And now she was going to use those skills to prove that her husband was a murderer. "These shell companies," she said, tapping one of the documents. "I've seen these names before. Flynn mentioned them a few times. Said they were just holding companies for international contracts. They're money laundering," Marcus said, "funneling profits from the drug sales through multiple accounts to hide the real revenue numbers. And my name is on 3 of them." "Exactly. Flynn put them in your name 2 years ago. I think he thought it was clever. Keeping assets tied to someone he controlled completely. But it also means you have legal authorization to request an audit." Lois sat back. Let that sink in. An audit would expose everything. Everything. The falsified trials. The buried safety reports. The money. All of it. All of it. She looked up at Marcus. How long have you known about this? Patterson briefed me 3 weeks ago. That's when I started tracking your movements, making sure I could get to you if Flynn made a move. 3 weeks. This man had been watching over her for 3 weeks. A stranger protecting her from a threat she hadn't even fully recognized yet. Lois felt something shift in her chest. Not gratitude exactly. Something more complicated. Something that felt like the beginning of trust. What happens now? She asked. Now you rest. You recover. And when you're ready, we contact the federal investigators and you tell them everything you know. And if Flynn comes looking for me, he won't find you. Not here. Marcus leaned forward. But I need you to understand something, Lois. Once you go public, once you testify, there's no going back. Flynn will know you're alive. Lauren will know. And they will come after you with everything they have. Legal teams, PR campaigns, maybe worse. You need to be prepared for that. I don't care. Her voice was steel, cold, certain. I want them destroyed, not just arrested. I want everything they built dismantled piece by piece. I want their names attached to every death their drug caused, every person who trusted them and got hurt. I want them to lose everything the way they tried to make me lose everything. Marcus studied her. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Okay, then. He stood. We start building the case. They worked for 3 days straight. Marcus pulled files from encrypted servers. Lois organized data, cross-referenced trial results, identified every point where the official reports diverged from the reality she'd seen in that black binder. She wrote timelines, drew connections, built a narrative that was clear, compelling, impossible to dismiss. And during those 3 days, something else happened. They talked, really talked, not just about the case, but about life, about loss, about the things that made them who they were. Marcus told her about his sister, Keisha, bright, funny, studying to be a teacher when chronic pain from a car accident led to a prescription that was supposed to help and instead destroyed her. How he'd watched her decline. How he believed the doctors who said the medication was safe. How he'd held her hand when she died and promised himself he'd never let another corporation get away with putting profits over people. Lois told him about her parents, both scientists, both killed in a lab accident when she was in college. How she'd thrown herself into research as a way to honor them. How she believed that science done right, done ethically, could actually save lives. How Flynn had seemed to share that vision. How he'd made her believe they were building something good together. I feel so stupid, she said on the third night. They were sitting at the table, laptops open, half-empty coffee mugs scattered around them. How did I not see it? How did I marry someone and not know who they really were? Because he's a good liar, Marcus said. And because you're a good person who wanted to believe the best about someone you loved. That's not stupidity. That's humanity. It almost got me killed. But it didn't. You're still here. And now you know the truth. What you do with that truth is what matters. Lois looked at him. This steady, quiet man who showed up when it mattered. Marcus. Yeah. When this is over, when Flynn and Lauren are arrested and the case is closed, what happens to you? He was quiet for a moment. Next job, I guess. That's it? You just move on. That's how this works. It doesn't have to. Marcus looked at her. Something unguarded flickered across his face. Lois, I'm just saying, you should stick around. At least until the baby's born. I'm going to need someone I trust. And right now, you're the only person in the world who fits that description. Your contract with Patterson. That's just to get me to testimony, right? Right. So after that, you don't have to stay. No, but I'm asking you to anyway. Long pause. Marcus set down his coffee mug. I'll think about it. Good. Lois smiled. Small. Tired. But real. That's all I'm asking. On the fourth day, Marcus cracked into Castellano Pharmaceuticals' main server. He'd been working on it for hours, bypassing firewalls, breaking encryption, moving through digital security like he'd been doing it his whole life. Lois was watching from across the table, half asleep, her head propped on her hand. And then Marcus went completely still. Not typing, not moving, just staring at the screen. What? Lois said, instantly awake. What is it? He didn't answer right away, just kept staring. Marcus, what did you find? He turned the laptop toward her. This. Lois read, scrolled, read more, and then she sat back and said, oh my God. Because here's what they'd found. Here's what nobody, not even the federal investigators, had figured out yet. Flynn wasn't running Castellano Pharmaceuticals. He never had been. Every major decision, every strategic move, every directive about the trials and the data falsification, it all traced back to a single encrypted account. One source. One person at the top of the entire operation. And when Marcus finally broke the encryption and the name came up, it was Lauren Williams. She built it. Marcus said quietly, the whole thing, years before Flynn was even involved. She recruited him, positioned him as the public face, let him play CEO while she ran everything from behind the scenes. Lois stared at the screen, at email after email, showing Lauren making decisions, giving orders, orchestrating the fraud that had put her name on those trial approvals. Flynn's a puppet, always has been. And I'm the prop he used to make himself look legitimate. Yes. Lois felt something cold and bright crystallize in her chest. Not rage anymore. Something sharper. Something that felt almost like clarity. Show me everything. They pulled it all. Every communication. Every financial transfer. Every directive that showed Lauren Williams as the architect of the entire criminal enterprise. And when they were done, when the file was complete and airtight and devastating, Lois grabbed her notebook. We need to move, she said. Now, while we still have the advantage. Move where? Seattle, the federal building. I'm going to walk in there myself and hand them everything we have. And I'm going to request a formal audit of those shell companies. The ones with my name on them. Because that's going to freeze every account Lauren has. Every asset. Every escape route. We're going to trap her the same way they tried to trap me. Marcus looked at her. That's dangerous, Lois. The second you show up alive, Flynn and Lauren are going to know. And they're going to come after you with everything. Let them come. I'm not hiding anymore. You're 7 months pregnant. I'm aware. She put her hand on her stomach. Felt the baby kick. Strong. Insistent. But this child deserved to be born into a world where her father is held accountable. And I deserve to watch his face when he realizes I survived. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, we leave tonight. They packed what little they had. Marcus made calls to Patterson, coordinating safe routes and secure locations in Seattle. Lois wrote everything down. Every detail she could remember about the trials. Every conversation with Flynn that now made terrible sense in hindsight, building the testimony in her mind until it was absolutely airtight. As they were getting ready to leave, Lois paused at the cabin door, looked back at the small, weathered space that had been her refuge for 4 days, the place where she transformed from victim to survivor, from betrayed wife to avenging witness. Thank you, she said softly, to the cabin, to Marcus, to God, to whoever was listening. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder, brief, steadying. You ready? Yeah, I'm ready. They drove through the night, took back roads, avoided highways. Marcus checking mirrors constantly, making sure they weren't followed. They stopped once at a rest area so Lois could stretch, use the bathroom, eat something from the bag of supplies Marcus had packed. The baby was active tonight, rolling and kicking like she could sense they were moving towards something important. She's restless, Lois said, sitting in the passenger seat with both hands on her stomach. Takes after her mom, Marcus said. You think so? I know so. You survive an explosion, and 4 days later you're charging back into the city to take down a pharmaceutical empire. Yeah, she's definitely taking after you. Lois smiled, first real smile in days. I hope she has better taste in men, though. Marcus almost laughed. That's fair. They reached Seattle just before dawn. Marcus had arranged a hotel 2 blocks from the federal building. Top floor, corner room, 2 exits and a clear sight line to the street. Lois collapsed on the bed, exhausted but too wired to sleep. Marcus did his usual setup, checking exits, testing locks, positioning himself where he could see both the door and the window. You really don't sleep much, do you? Lois asked. Occupational hazard. You can rest. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not worried about you going anywhere. I'm worried about someone making you disappear. Marcus. She sat up. Can I ask you something? Yeah. When this is over, when Flynn and Lauren are arrested and I've testified and the case is closed, what are you going to do? He was quiet. I told you. Next job. That's it? You just move on to the next person who needs saving? It's what I do, Lois. It doesn't have to be. She paused, chose her words carefully. I meant what I said at the cabin, about sticking around. I know this started as a job for you, but it doesn't have to stay that way. You could stay. Help me figure out what comes after all this. Help me raise this baby who wouldn't exist if you hadn't pulled me out of that water. Marcus turned to look at her. Really look at her. You're asking me to be part of your life. I'm asking you to consider it, because I trust you, and I haven't trusted anyone in a very long time. So just think about it. Okay. Long pause. Then, okay, I'll think about it. Good. Lois lay back down, and despite everything, despite the enormous day ahead, she fell asleep, because Marcus was there, and for the first time since this nightmare started, she felt safe. Morning came fast. Lois woke to Marcus holding out a cup of coffee and a bagel. Eat, he said. You're going to need your strength. She ate, showered, put on the one outfit she had that didn't look like she'd been living in a fishing cabin for 4 days. Marcus had somehow acquired business clothes for her. Simple black pants, a white blouse that stretched across her pregnant belly, but looked professional enough. She braided her hair, looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back was different from the one who'd stepped onto that yacht 6 days ago. Harder, clearer, unbreakable. You ready? Marcus asked from the doorway. Yeah, let's do this. They walked the 2 blocks to the federal building. Marcus stayed 2 steps behind her the whole way, scanning their surroundings, watching for threats. Lois walked with her head up, one hand on her stomach, the other carrying a folder full of evidence that was about to blow Castellano Pharmaceuticals apart. When they walked through the doors of the federal building, you could feel the energy shift. People stopped, stared, pulled out phones, because Lois Castellano was supposed to be dead, and she was very much not dead. She was alive, visibly pregnant, and walking toward the elevators like she owned the building. Patterson met them on the 7th floor. Tall, 60s, gray suit, sharp eyes that had seen everything twice. He shook Lois's hand, nodded at Marcus. Dr. Castellano, he said, you're about to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. Good, Lois said. That's exactly what I'm here to do. This way. The deposition room was small, windowless, a table, chairs, recording equipment, 3 federal prosecutors waiting. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Chun, late 40s, severe haircut, the kind of face that said she'd build her career destroying people who thought they were untouchable. Dr. Castellano, Chun said, please sit down. Lois sat. Marcus took a position by the door, and for the next 4 hours, Lois walked them through everything. Every falsified data point, every buried safety report, every patient who'd been silenced with money and NDAs. She authenticated the documents Marcus had pulled from the servers, confirmed Flynn's recruitment strategy, explained in precise, devastating detail exactly how Castellano Pharmaceuticals had pushed a dangerous drug to market by building their entire operation on fraud. And she didn't cry, didn't waver, didn't let emotion cloud the facts. She just delivered truth after truth after truth in the same clear, methodical voice she'd used to present research finding for years. Like she was dismantling her entire life with the same care she'd once used to build it. When she was done, Chin leaned back in her chair. Dr. Castellano, you just handed us everything we need to bring criminal charges against everyone involved in this fraud. I know, Lois said. You also just made yourself the key witness in what's going to be the biggest pharmaceutical case in a decade. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for 6 days. I'm ready. Chin almost smiled. We'll issue arrest warrants within the hour. Where can we reach you for follow-up? Lois looked at Patterson. He gave her a phone number. Memorize it, he said. This is your direct line to me and to protective services if you need them. One more thing, Lois said. I want to be there when you arrest them. Chin frowned. That's highly irregular. I don't care. I want to watch. Dr. Castellano, I understand the emotional component here, but I want to be there. Lois's voice was absolute. I've earned that. I think we can all agree I've earned that. Chin looked at Patterson. Patterson shrugged. She's not in official custody. She can go where she wants. Chin sighed. Fine, but you stay in the vehicle. And if anything goes sideways, Marcus gets you out immediately. Non-negotiable. Deal, Lois said. If you're still watching this, if you followed Lois's journey from that yacht to this federal building, do me a favor. Drop a comment right now. Tell me who you think is the real villain here. Flynn, who betrayed the woman he married, or Lauren, who orchestrated everything from shadows. Because I'm telling you, the answer might surprise you. And while you're down there, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear a story about survival, about a woman who refused to let murder be her ending. Because we're not done yet. The confrontation you've been waiting for, it's about to happen. They arrested Flynn at Castellano Pharmaceuticals headquarters. Federal agents walked right into his corner office with the floor, the ceiling windows, and a view that stretched forever. Walked past his assistant, past the security. Put handcuffs on him in front of his entire executive team. Lois watched from the federal vehicle parked across the street. Marcus beside her, silent, present. She saw the moment Flynn understood what was happening. Saw his face go from confusion to anger to something that looked almost like panic. Saw him scan the room like he was looking for an exit that didn't exist anymore. And then, as the agents walked him out of the building, he looked across the street, directly at the vehicle, directly at her through the tinted windows. Their eyes met. Lois didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't give him anything except a look that said everything she needed to say. I'm alive. I survived. You failed. And you're done. Flynn's face did something complicated. Recognition, disbelief, fear, all of it flashing across his features in the span of 3 seconds. And then the agents put him in their vehicle and drove away. And Lois sat there feeling something she hadn't felt in 6 days. Relief. Pure. Simple. The kind that comes from watching justice actually happen. How do you feel? Marcus asked quietly. Lois was quiet for a long moment. Like I just took the first real breath in 6 months. They arrested Lauren 2 hours later at her penthouse in downtown Seattle. She answered the door in a silk robe, hair perfect, makeup flawless, like she'd been expecting them. When Chun read her the charges, conspiracy to commit fraud, falsification of federal trial data, accessory to attempted murder, Lauren smiled. That same clinical, unbothered smile Lois had seen on the yacht. I want my lawyer, was all she said. You're going to need several, Chin replied. They walked her out in handcuffs. No coat, no shoes, just a silk robe and that smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And even now, even caught, she looked like she believed she'd find a way out, like she'd already calculated the next 10 moves, and like her chances, she wouldn't find a way out. The evidence was too solid, the paper trail too clear. But the fact that she thought she could, that told you everything you needed to know about Lauren Williams. Lois didn't watch that arrest in person. She was already back at the hotel, feet elevated, hand on her stomach, watching the news coverage on the television. Breaking news. Pharmaceutical executives arrested in massive fraud case. Photos of Flynn and Lauren being led away in handcuffs. Reporters scrambling for details. The story was everywhere. Cable news, social media, the front page of every major outlet. Lois watched it all with a strange sense of detachment, like she was observing something happening to someone else. But the baby kicked, grounding her, reminding her this was real, this was her life, and she'd just changed the entire trajectory of it. Marcus came back an hour later with food. Real food, Thai takeout from a place 3 blocks over. Lois ate like she hadn't eaten in days. Because she actually hadn't. Not really. Not proper meals. Just survival food. Crackers and protein bars, and whatever Marcus put in front of her. Patterson called. Marcus said, sitting across from her with his own container. The shell company audit went through. Every account with your name on it is frozen. Lauren's entire financial network is locked down. How much? Hundreds of millions. Lois set down her fork. Hundreds of millions that she stole by hurting people. Yeah. Good. I hope it bankrupts her. They ate in comfortable silence. And then Marcus said something that surprised her. You did good today, Lois. We did good, she corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You pulled yourself out of that water. I just helped with the swimming. You jumped off a rescue boat in the middle of a storm. That's more than helping with the swimming. Fair point. He almost smiled. That expression she'd learned to recognize. The one that meant he was pleased but didn't quite know how to show it. Marcus? Yeah, I meant what I said about sticking around. He looked at her, really looked at her. I know you did. And, long pause. My contract ended yesterday. Patterson released me when you finished the deposition. So why are you still here? Because you asked me to be. Something warm bloomed in Lois's chest. You're staying? Actually staying? For now, at least until the baby comes. Make sure you're both okay. And after? I don't know yet, but I'm here now. That's what matters. Lois smiled. Genuine. Full. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're about to be very pregnant and very bored while the legal process grinds forward. You might get sick of me. I doubt that. The trial was scheduled for spring. Flynn and Lauren both pleaded not guilty, which surprised exactly no one. Their legal teams filed motion after motion trying to get evidence suppressed, trying to get the case thrown out, trying everything they could to avoid the inevitable. It didn't work. The case was too solid. The evidence too overwhelming. Chun had built a prosecution that was basically airtight. Lois moved into a small house in Ballard. 2 bedrooms, a yard, walking distance to the water. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. Clean, uncomplicated. No ghosts. Marcus helped her move in, carried boxes, assembled the crib she'd ordered online, installed security cameras and motion sensors, and about 15 other things Lois pretended to find excessive but secretly appreciated. You know you don't have to do all this, she said, watching him install a camera above the back door. I know. Patterson's not paying you anymore. I know that too. So why? Because I want to. He climbed down from the ladder, looked at her. I want to make sure you're safe. You and the baby. Not because it's a job. Just because. Lois felt tears prick her eyes. Pregnancy hormones making everything more intense. Or maybe just the kindness of this man who kept showing up. Okay, she managed. Okay, thank you. They finished setting up the house together. Painted the nursery a soft yellow. Assembled furniture. Organized the chaos of preparing for a baby while also preparing to be the star witness in a federal trial. And somewhere in all of that, in the ordinary routine of building a life, Lois started to heal. Started to remember what it felt like to feel safe. The baby came 3 weeks early. Not dangerously early. Just impatient. Lois woke at 4 a.m. to contractions that took her breath away. She called Marcus. He was there in 10 minutes, calm and efficient, getting her to hospital like he'd done this 100 times before. Labor was long, intense. Lois had been through an explosion and near drowning, but somehow this was harder, more immediate, more real. But Marcus stayed, not in the delivery room. She'd made that boundary clear, but right outside, pacing, checking his phone, making sure everything was ready for when the baby arrived. When the nurse came out 7 hours later and said, "She's asking for you," Marcus's brain stuttered for a second, because he wasn't family, wasn't the father, was just a guy who pulled Lois out of the ocean and refused to leave. But he went in anyway. Lois was in a hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, her braids pulled back, hospital gown rumpled, and in her arms, wrapped in white blankets, was the tiniest, most perfect person Marcus had ever seen. "Marcus," Lois said, smiling so wide it looked like her face might split. "Meet Maya." Maya. New beginning. Fresh start. A name with no history attached to it. Just hope. "She's perfect," Marcus said, and he meant it with every part himself. "You want to hold her?" I've never." Marcus. Hold her. He held her. This tiny person who weighed almost nothing, but somehow felt like she weighed everything. Who had her mother's nose and her own very strong opinions about being born, and absolutely no idea that she'd survived a murder attempt before she'd even taken her first breath. "Hi, Maya," Marcus said quietly. The baby blinked up at him with dark, solemn eyes, already skeptical of the world, already brilliant. "She likes you," Lois said. "How can you tell?" "She's not screaming. Trust me, that's approval from a newborn." Marcus smiled, full and genuine. The kind of smile Lois had been collecting for weeks now. And something settled in the room. Something that felt like family. Not the kind you're born into. The kind you choose. The kind you build from survival and trust and showing up. This is important. So stay with me. Because what happens next changes everything. The trial. The verdict. The moment Lois has been fighting for since the second she realized her husband tried to kill her. If you're invested in this story, if you want to see justice happen, drop a like right now. Let me know you're still here. And share this with someone who needs to hear about a woman who turned betrayal into testimony, who turned survival into victory. Because we're in the final stretch now. And I promise you, the ending is worth it. 9 months after Maya was born, the trial ended. Guilty on all counts. Flynn got 15 years. Lauren got 20. Castellano Pharmaceuticals was dissolved, every asset seized, every executive involved in the fraud facing their own charges. The drug was pulled from the market. A victims fund was established. 47 families received compensation. And Lois's testimony was cited in 7 different medical journals as a landmark case in research ethics and pharmaceutical accountability. Justice. Real justice. The kind that doesn't happen often enough, but when it does, it changes everything. Lois didn't go back to research right away. Maybe eventually, when Maya was older, when the world felt stable again. But for now, she was content with her small house in Ballard, with the garden she kept meaning to deal with but never quite got around to, with the beautiful, ordinary, unremarkable routine of raising a child who had no idea how extraordinary her existence was. Marcus stayed, not as a bodyguard, not as hired protection, just as the person who was there, who showed up when it mattered, who held Maya when Lois needed sleep, who fixed things that broke, who existed in their lives like he'd always been meant to be there. They never put a label on what they were to each other. Didn't need to. Labels felt less important than the reality. They were family, chosen, built from wreckage and courage, earned through trust. On a Sunday morning in late spring, Lois sat on the back porch with coffee in her hands, watching Marcus push Maya on the little swing he'd installed last month. The baby was shrieking with delight, grabbing at air, absolutely fearless. The garden was overgrown, wildflowers mixing with weeds in a beautiful chaos. Lois had stopped trying control. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patterson. Victims Fund fully distributed. 47 families. Your testimony changed lives. Lois read it twice. Let it settle. She'd done what she'd set out to do. Expose the fraud. Held Flynn and Lauren accountable. Made sure the people they'd hurt received some measure of justice. It didn't bring back the lives lost. Didn't undo the damage. But it was something. It mattered. Marcus looked over. Caught her watching. Raised an eyebrow in question. She shook her head. Smiled. Mouthed. Later, he nodded. Turned back to Maya. Pushed her higher. And the baby laughed. Pure and joyful. The sound carrying across the overgrown garden like a promise. Lois sat there in the sun in her home, in her life, and let herself be happy. Actually happy. Not the performance of happiness she'd lived in with Flynn. Not the picture-perfect life that looked good on the outside, but was rotten underneath. Real happiness. The kind built on truth. Because here's what I need you to understand. Here's the lesson at the heart of this entire story. Lois didn't survive because someone saved her, though Marcus jumping into that water absolutely mattered. She survived because when everything she thought she'd built turned out to be a lie, she discovered what she was actually made of. Turns out the smartest, strongest, most dangerous version of Lois Castellano had been there all along, just waiting for the moment when she had nothing left to lose. The real truth? The person who survives isn't the one who never gets betrayed, isn't the one who never faces impossible situations. It's the one who refuses to let the betrayal be the ending. It's the one who takes the wreckage and builds something new, something real, something that can't be taken away because you built it yourself on your own terms with people who chose to stay. Lois could have stayed silent, could have taken what Flynn did and buried it along with her grief, could have disappeared into witness protection and spent the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. But she didn't. She stood up, spoke truth, demanded accountability, and in doing that, she saved 47 families from the same fate, changed medical ethics standards, made sure her daughter would grow up knowing her mother was a woman who fought back. That's the power of testimony. That's the power of refusing to be silenced. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And the people trying to keep you quiet, they're counting on you staying scared, staying small, staying silent. Don't give them that victory. If this story moved you, if you felt every moment from that explosion to this back porch, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because we're telling stories that matter. Stories about people who survive, who fight back, who win. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your sister, your friend, that woman in your life who's going through something she hasn't told anyone about yet. Let her know she's not alone. Let her know survival is possible. Let her know she can fight back and win. And drop a comment. Tell me what hit you hardest. Was it the betrayal? The explosion? The moment Marcus pulled her from the water? The testimony? The ending where she gets to just be happy? I want to know what resonated with you, because your engagement helps this story reach more people. And the more people who hear about Lois, the more women who realize they don't have to accept abuse, don't have to stay quiet, don't have to let someone else write their ending. One more thing, to every woman watching this, if your instincts are telling you something's wrong, listen to them. If someone in your life makes you feel like you're crazy for questioning them, question harder. If you find something that doesn't add up, don't ignore it. Lois almost died because she wanted to believe the best about someone who'd already shown her who he really was. Don't make that mistake. Trust yourself. Document everything. And when you're ready to speak your truth, know that there are people ready to listen, ready to help, ready to make sure justice actually happens. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. Your safety matters. Your life matters. And if you need help, reach out. National Domestic Violence Hotline, local women's shelters, trusted friends, someone who will believe you, because Lois survived, but not everyone does. And I need you to survive. This is your reminder that you are stronger than you think, smarter than they told you, more capable than anyone who tried to diminish you could ever imagine. And when you're ready to fight back, when you're ready to speak your truth, the world will listen. Hit that subscribe button. Join this family. And let's keep telling stories about women who refuse to be erased. Because the next story could be yours. And it could end with victory. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe. Stay strong. And remember, you're never as powerless as someone wants you to believe.